I went roller skating in Central Park, the vlog. But before skating at Central Park, I had to get to Central Park. I live in Connecticut, so my partner and I took the train in, and then once we got to New York, we stopped at one of our favorite quick service restaurants, Los Tacos #1. They're located right near Grand Central, which makes it a really convenient stop for lunch after a 2-hour train ride. And their tacos are, as the name implies, #1. They are fantastic. We took our lunch to go and started heading towards Bryant Park, which is not technically on the way to Central Park, but we just wanted to stop and have a nice lunch outside somewhere. And on one side of Bryant Park is the New York Public Library, where they have some really nice shaded tables and chairs, which is where we wound up eating lunch. Then I took a traditional dorky New York tourist selfie on our walk to Bryant Park, where we then took the subway up to Central Park, which is where I started recording with my 360-degree camera. So if you get motion sickness, I apologize. Parts of this video may be a little bit difficult to watch. On our walk to the Skaters Circle, we stopped at a few important monuments along the way, including the Balto statue, which is dedicated to the real sled dog and sled dog team that the 1995 animated movie was based on. Balto was a very good boy, and you can tell how loved his statue is based on the wear pattern on its back. After visiting Balto, we made our way over to the Women's Rights Monument, which is dedicated to women's rights pioneers Sojourner Truth, Susan B. Anthony, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Continuing on, we then discovered lots of groups of people playing badminton. I don't think I've ever seen this many people playing badminton all at the same time. It was really interesting. Then we passed by the sheep meadow. And no, there aren't any sheep, that's just what this lawn is called, before finally arriving at the Skaters Circle. While the rest of the pavement in Central Park is either too bumpy to skate on, or has too many cracks and hazards like horse carriages and rickshaws, this area in Central Park is specifically designated for skating. So not only is the pavement a lot smoother, it's also painted to designate different areas, including a long oval you can skate around in the center, one end where people do a lot of tricks where they're standing in place, and the other end that feels more like a practice area. I'm still only 2 months into learning how to roller skate, so I didn't do anything too wild here, but I did take my 360 camera around and do a lot of people watching. Because if you weren't aware, roller skating rinks in general are excellent for people watching, and add on top of that the fact that I was in Central Park in New York City. The vibes were immaculate, the talent was incredible, and I had no problem with just skating a few laps and people watching the whole time. It was fantastic, and although I didn't capture it on camera when I fell flat on my face right in front of the DJ booth, I did get this clip of me hitting a rock and almost falling. And this is why we always wear our protective gear when skating outside. And of course, I got quite a few shots of me with the 360 cam, looking like I'm skating on a tiny planet. Go Tiny Renee, go! Then I took my new favorite selfie of me, this golden hour photo of a couple framed perfectly by the trees, and then we left the Skater Circle for the day. We headed over to Cherry Hill, which has a relatively small fountain, but some really pretty views of the city in the background, and then headed over to Bethesda Terrace, which had a lot more going on. Everybody dancing. And as cool as it was from far away, we wanted to get a little closer. So I grabbed a corn dog from one of the snack carts, and we made our way down the many stairs to Bethesda Terrace. We took a moment to stop and admire Bethesda Fountain, which is much larger and more impressive than the one on Cherry Hill, and I removed my Invisalign so we could sit down to eat. Here I am after lunch brushing my teeth before putting my Invisalign back in. Yes, I have to do this every meal. I just didn't film me doing this with the tacos in front of the New York Public Library, but I did it there too. It was somewhere around this time that I accidentally got a sunblock smudge on my camera lens, which I unfortunately did not realize was there until I got home later that night. So I apologize for the random smudge throughout the rest of the video. Then we went up through what is known as the mall. It is not a shopping mall and there are no stores. That's just what it's called, which has absolutely gorgeous architecture. It's something I would recommend visiting if you are in New York, especially if you're in Central Park, because this is free, which still blows my mind sometimes. Then we made our way back up the stairs, which brings you to the opposite side of the street from where we entered. And from there we continued wandering until we encountered a freestyle slalom skater. If you didn't already know, there are many different styles of skating. And this particular style is not one that I'm interested in learning, but it looks incredibly impressive. After a short break, we made our way to our final stop in Central Park, Strawberry Fields, which, if you didn't know, is a tribute to John Lennon. You've probably seen pictures of the Imagine mosaic online. I know I have. So seeing it in person is a little surreal, but very cool. When I find myself in time of trouble, At this point in time, my partner and I were both very tired and very hungry. We knew we wanted to catch dinner back near Grand Central, but we were about halfway into Central Park. So we decided to take one of the fastest ways out of Central Park, a rickshaw. And you know it's going to be an interesting rickshaw ride when you don't choose the rickshaw chooses you. I've ridden in a rickshaw before, so I kind of knew what to expect. My partner had not. So for anyone who's never ridden in a rickshaw in Central Park before, here's your heads up for what they're actually like, with bonus views of some of my best facial reactions because I did film this with a 360-degree camera. We began our ride with my partner having to move his bag out of the way so that it didn't hit the rickshaw next to us. And it only got better from there. Our rickshaw driver decided that red lights don't exist, and that everyone should yield to him, as is tradition in New York City. And while yes, the streets that we were on in this particular part of the video were still within Central Park, which means they're not open to all traffic, they do still have streetlights, traffic signs, and crosswalks that are supposed to be obeyed by all vehicles, rickshaws included. But on the plus side, our rickshaw driver was very friendly and pointed out a lot of different tourist locations for us, such as the bridge where the bird lady scene in Home Alone 2 was filmed, and even where the snowball fight from Elf was filmed. We saw a very brave man inline skating on the main road, right before the third most terrifying thing on this ride happened, and we approached a very busy intersection, where somehow we still didn't hit anyone. And if you're wondering why I said that was the third most terrifying event that happened, here's the fourth. Us turning onto a road, traveling the wrong direction, and our rickshaw driver telling the person going the correct direction to watch out. And if you're wondering what the first and second most terrifying moments were, keep in mind, up until this point, we were still inside Central Park. Apparently, even the other Central Park rickshaw drivers are not a fan of our driver. At this point, we were driving along the outer edge of Central Park, and for the record, I didn't tell him to take us out of the park. I had asked him to bring us near 6th Avenue, and this is the path that he chose. But don't worry, we're almost there, so surely nothing else bad could happen. Then finally we arrived at what was apparently a rickshaw parking area, where a collision finally occurred, with the feather decoration of another rickshaw. I have no idea how that's the only thing we hit, but part of me questions whether or not our driver did it on purpose just to show off, given how confidently he jumped off the rickshaw at the end of the ride as though nothing had ever happened. We then made our way back to Grand Central, where we settled on Pershing Square for dinner, which is right across the street and comes with complimentary pigeon feathers, appropriately placed right on top of the listing for the New York Strip. But in all seriousness, the food and service there were fantastic. And if you're wondering, this is just outside the front door, which is how I knew it was a pigeon feather. Welcome to New York. And the best part about eating dinner across the street from Grand Central is once we were done eating dinner, we just walked across the street and took the next train home.